Hello, this is Danny from CG Dreams. In this video I'm going to show you a brief overview of how I created this hairstyle and some of the things that I came against which makes me realise I should have done things slightly different. So the first thing that you would normally do is you would select the mesh, or you would select a hair cap mesh and then generate hair on there from the Ornatrix, add hair. And that's exactly what I did for the first try. However, for the second try I went a different route, and I explain why briefly. When you add the hair to, say for instance, a whole character, it will try to distribute the guides across the whole character, and this is all done within the guides from mesh. Now when you do this, you'll have the mesh in here. So in this particular case, my first try would have had this ZBrush default group, which is actually the male head. Just rename that. So what ends up happening is when you go about this like this, you'll have all of the guides distributed across the entire area of the body and the head and the scalp. This causes a problem obviously because you don't necessarily want the hair on the whole entire body. So what you have to do then is you would have to paint a distribution map, and then you could place it in here. And what this does is it will confine the guides to just be showing from here. Now what will happen is because you've choose to define the hair to be just from the scalp, you would have to significantly increase the guide count to make up for the area that you want more density in. In other words, the scalp area. So this could be something more like 3,000 or 4,000, and it's not really a problem. But the problem lies in the fact that you've had to use a distribution map in here, and that won't be apparent until a bit later on. In my particular case, I found that the distribution map that I painted, which is a grayscale map, it will control where the hair is grown from, or shall I say where the actual guides are growing from. Now I needed to edit this particular map, and then when I found I updated the map and put it back on again, the whole entire hair was destroyed. All of the styling was completely destroyed. So you can't go back and redo that. So the best option is to extract an area which you're going to be using as a hair cap. So the hair cap in this particular case looks like this. I'm just going to show you. This is an extracted area from the base mesh, and then you see on top of this a map which is only put on here just for visual purposes as a material, but you see this map is then controlling the actual shape of the rooted area, the hairline. So this is a better way to go about it, and that is to use a hair cap and then choose to have the hair distributed differently. The difference is with this is that you can go back in there and edit this map. It will not destroy your style. And this is because this particular map is not put on the guides from mesh. It's actually put in another operator, one which generates the hair itself. So this controls from this point of view. So when you look at the guides from mesh, you'll see that it's going to be confined to the cap, and no distribution map is going to be used for this in here. But when it comes to generating the hair itself, this is when we use the distribution multiplier where we add that map. Now, as I just said, if you were to change this map, it wouldn't actually destroy your hairstyle. To demonstrate this, I'm going to destroy this map. I'm going to just paint it. Like this. I've called this map mess, and I'm going to load it into here. You can do this from the file selection here, not from drag and drop, unfortunately. Or you might be able to actually do the drag and drop. I've just opened the browser in this particular case. So you'll notice here that it's just simply just missing hair. The actual style itself has not disappeared. You can see there. We're just missing pieces of hair where there's obviously black in the map. And then I'll load this back in here again, and then it will reproduce the hair again. I just need to update this, that's all, and then it will come back. So we're going back from here now, back to the guides for mesh, and as I mentioned, the first try I initially just took all of the guides that it generated for the hair cap area, or shall I say for the head area that was controlled. But even then I kind of run into some problems, and that is that I had too many guides, or guides where they weren't particularly located where I needed them. And for some particular styles that's absolutely fine, but the top of hairstyle that I was creating was a very controlled top of hairstyle, and this is why I had to go about it a slightly different route, and that was to place my own guides in there. So what I did was I deleted the guides from mesh, and then I started to place my own individual guides in there one at a time, and I didn't add too many. As you can see here, there wasn't actually that many. The main important thing was that I made sure that I had enough guides that were going along the actual edges here. This was especially important because the type of map that I used to control the distribution had a black line right the way through here, and this was something that I shouldn't have done, but I did. However, it did do the job. It stopped hair from growing in this particular area here, and when you do this you need to have more guides to make sure that they are growing right along the edge. So you can see here that I've actually been quite particular adding some more guides along the edge. So that's how I was able to get that much control. Now as far as the styling is concerned, it's primarily done with two modifier stacks, and they're called surface. I've got two in here, one called surface comb up and one called surface comb down, and that is to control the different parts of the hair. So obviously the comb up is for the top part of the hair, and the comb down is for the bottom part of the hair. Now how I was able to distribute this between the two parts was to use a feature inside the edit guides, and this is found in edit guides called strand groups, and the strand groups are given an ID number, and the ID number can be assigned to a particular selection of strands, or guides in this particular case. So the guides have been assigned to a particular group, and then when we go to other operator stacks, we can then assign the operator stack to just affect that particular group. So that's exactly what I did with the surface comb up and comb down. You'll see here in the object I've got this strand group number 2, and then in the surface comb down there's strand group number 1. That means that it isolates the particular effect just to those groups. So that's really handy, and it's something that you can do for all of the operator stacks. You can have multiple operator stacks to control different groups of hair. Now with the surface comb, the way in which it works is it allows you to comb the hair based on these arrows that you draw, which are called sinks. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to add hair to this object, and then I'm going to, after the edit guides, I'm going to add a comb, and then you'll see how this works, a surface comb. So in the sinks properties here, you'll be able to draw your own sinks. These are basically arrows, so we're going to add sink, and then we will drag and drop these, and you'll notice that you can add multiple sinks, so that in particular parts of the groom you could have the sinks going in slightly different directions. So it's not really just the case that it's linear and that all of your guides are going to point to a particular single sink. you can have multiple sinks that assign particular hairs to a particular direction. This is really powerful because you're able to then edit those sinks and even control a slight different direction in a particular area. If you see here, I'm going like a zigzag like this, and you can see that it's following those sinks. In addition to that, you've obviously got more control in here. As an example, the slope ramp and at what point it bends during the actual curve or the hair. So you can see here that you can make it so it bends quite low down the bottom here, and it even can fold over there. You've got a lot of control with this. The next one is the hair from guides. Now the hair from guides is a very important one, obviously, because this is the one that generates the hair, and anything within this operator stack is to do with purely the hair. So we've got a distribution type. I keep this on this one most of the time, it's an even one. And then you've got a lot more settings in here, such as how many hairs you want overall. And obviously this is where I added the distribution map as to where the hair is going to grow. This is obviously a very important part of the process. In addition to this, we've got the guide interpolation, and this is basically how Ornatrix is going to interpolate between one guide and the next. You're going to use different settings according to different styles, but I've found so far that this is typically what I would use with this type of interpolation type, the nearest neighbour. It seems to be more reliable for a multitude of hairstyles. So moving on to the next one here is our detail up and detail down. This is obviously associated to the upper part and the lower part of the hair. And again, we've divided this off into groups. So the strand group is added here, and what this allows you to do is it allows you to control, according to the group or the whole entire style, how many points you want on each individual guide or hair. Now I say guide or hair because you can add this detail or many of the other operator stacks either after the hair from guides, which means it's going to be affecting directly the hair, or you can add it just after the edit guides or the guides from mesh. What this will then do is it will then affect either the guides if it's placed at the top here, or if it's placed underneath the hair from guides, it's going to affect just the hair. So this is the benefit of the order of operation as to where you've got a particular operator stack in that stack. So in this particular case, I've chosen to have the viewport count to be 21, but when it renders to have 52. I needed a higher amount because the hair was longer at the top of the hair, but you'll notice at the bottom of the hair we could have that a little bit lower. In fact, it didn't really even need 30 points for the lower hair. But you can get the idea from this is that you're not set to have your point count across the whole entire style. So this is going to give you a great performance boost, because in Cinema 4D's own hair system you either set it to be one or the other, either lower or higher, but you don't get to choose individual groups of hair that are either longer or shorter as to how many points they're going to have down the length of the strand. The next one here is a very important one, and this one controls the length. Now you can obviously go into the edit guides and use the grooming tools to actually choose the length tool, or even the cutting tool to manually cut it. But I wanted to see what I could do procedurally, so I did everything procedurally. I did not cut a single hair in there manually. So what I did was I used this length. I did get the initial style from back to front a bit longer at the top with the cutting, but after that it was literally just this length operator. Now what I did was I used a map in here, but you can actually use a gradient as well, so you could go in there and choose a gradient so that you have it going from the top down to the bottom as a slight gradient between where it's thinner, or shall I say less density and more higher density. In this particular case I went for the map because if you was to use the gradient, it's dependable on the UVs, and the UVs have to be aligned correctly in order for this to work. They have to be more suitable for it. So that's why I've done this. And finally we get down to the next one here, which is the change width. This is, as you would expect, this controls how thick the hair is going to be. And then we move on to the clumping. As you can see, the clumping I've divided between the clumping up and not clumping down. I didn't want no clumping on the bottom there. But you notice I've got two clumps in here. One clump is for the bigger clumps, and then I've added another clump called the sub clumps. Now when you add a clump for the upper clumps, you'll see that you've got this option here saying add clump index channel. What this allows you to do is when you add your sub clumps, you can go into there and you can select that index channel from there. And what this allows you to do is allow you to have them mixed together and combine, so that you can see a mix between the large clumps, and those large clumps will then be broken down into sub clumps, so that you've got a really organic, realistic look to the clumping. And that's how I done this. In fact, the upper clump used, I didn't even use a region channel in this particular case, and the reason is because I didn't find it actually made any difference. For some reason it just didn't make any difference at all. So there you go, but I will check that out. Next thing is frizz. Frizz is obviously going to do what you expect. It's going to take something which is too clean and give it a little bit of a mess, a little bit more organic look. And the frizz does just that. It just literally takes something that's too perfect and then messes it up a little bit. Obviously there's lots of settings within these individual operators, but I wanted to just give you a rundown of how I did this. Some of the things that I wish I had done differently for this project is I wish that when I made the distribution map that I didn't add this black thing in the map, this black strip. This is because ultimately when you're going to create parting, all you have to do is just rely on the parting attribute within the hair from guides. I used both, but I didn't really need to. You see with the planes that are added here, you literally draw them on and you can direct them where you want the parting to be. And then what Ornatrix will do is it will then decide to part the hair and make the hair divide between those two areas. You've also got another one here called Auto Part, which actually does a very good job, providing your hairstyle is quite distinct in where you want the part to be. So I didn't really need to use the map, which gives me the black part in there. It was entirely unnecessary. And you can see this in the map here, where I've added this. I didn't really need it, and the reason why I didn't need it is because obviously I can part it with these cards, but also because I wanted to add some hair in there still, just to give it a little bit more a natural look, rather than having it look as though it was shaved. It was completely bald in the area. I just wanted it to be a parting. I got around the first couple of issues, and that was the fact that I relied on the guides for mesh for the guides, and I used a distribution map. I also think I used face include, which basically it uses a selection of polygons that you select, and that's a polygon set, selection set. So you use a selection set, and there you use face include. That's that done. And then I would use distribution map in there. That's a bad way of going about it. As I mentioned before, it messes the hairstyle up. So I hope you found this overview useful and helpful, and I'm going to be creating a few more styles and develop a workflow which really utilises all of the features of Ornatrix over time. I will be making some videos on how to make particular styles, but obviously I need to home in on my skill set myself so that I'm able to pass that on to you.